people say choke cars. There's a lot of cars there. And no matter where you go, there's tons and tons and tons of cars. As far as the construction for homes and so forth, there's still a great need for that. And then you have the water issues because Hawaii, as beautiful as it is, much of the water from the mauna or the mountain is directed or to the hotels and for commercialization. And of course, um, of course, those are issues that we as a kingdom will address. And there's other ways of bringing water through desalination and what have you. But fortunately for us as a kingdom, we have beautiful amount of waters beneath our feet. And it's just to preserve that and to preserve the things that we need. But I will go over some of these letters in a little bit. And the reason I want to start that prior to moving forward, I said to each of you that all these meetings that we have had is leading to the contract and salaries and everything that we, I got my notes, papers. So the first question I will have to ask you, you need to look at, working for the kingdom is one thing, but how are we going to address citizenship? Dual citizenship? Are you folks going to be subject of the Kingdom of Hawaii or citizens of the Kingdom of Hawaii? Do you want to maintain your American citizenship, but still work for the Kingdom of Hawaii? These are choices, decisions you have to make. And they're very critical decisions. And once you know what you want to do, then we can address legally everything else that will follow. Because I am not opposed to dual citizenship, not in the least. But there's an old saying: you cannot serve two kings effectively, for an example, because you're going to disappoint one and please the other, and you're going to go back and forth, and that's not fair for you. So I need all of you to make a decision as to what you want to do. Now that we're closer, and we'll have a financial update as well, and how we tend to move forward. All my meetings have been honest and direct. And this assignment I gave you leads me to believe that you folks really know what you're talking about when we talk about aloha and the love that comes from that. So, dual citizenship. Is that a doable thing? The answer is yes. However, can you serve two masters at one time has been the old saying. Because as we started this campaign since 2002. Much of you have worked tirelessly with love and aloha without pay. Much of you have devoted your time, volunteered your time without pay. Now, contracts are being written up. Payment will begin. But I need you folks to make a decision as to what you really want to do. That's critical. And then our legal department will go through it all. Part of which I'm taking this moment is taxation. Who you pay taxes to? Are you paying taxes for this government or that government? Where do we all stand? As in anything, that's a subject that needs to be addressed, is taxes and how we're going to work through those taxes. The second thing we have to work on is, aside from that, you pretty much understand the customs and tradition based primarily on what you folks sent to me. Hold on one second. On your assignment that you did. So because the assignment was so well written, it makes my discussion here with all of you very, very easy. Because there's no doubt that you have a tremendous love for me, for the kingdom, for our people. And there's no doubt about that. And I would like to extend my aloha and say there's no doubt of my love for all of you as well. And I will say that I've often heard the phrase in Hawaii that we are truly blessed, we are truly loved, and we're truly respected. And as your mo'i king, I really am grateful for all of you and your mana'o, or your thoughts. Now it's getting real time as to putting all this stuff together. That's one thing. The next is creating the Kingdom Government Publishing Office. And that'll be part of the legislative branch. And what this publishing office will do is printing will be our passports, our diplomatic passports, our citizens' passport, visas, IDs, and so forth. Each county or a'upua'a will be responsible for their people on those various islands. And there will be, of course, driver's license and the things that make up the citizen. What makes this legal? What makes it legal is diplomatic relations based on international law. I have carefully and methodically, well, that's a big word, methodical. I don't know if I can spell that one. Methodically, I've spoken to many nations outside of the Kingdom of Hawaii and entering into the diplomatic relationships such as treaties of treaties of friendship, commerce, and so forth, as well as maritime. And these countries that I've spoken to obviously know that the United States is still part of what we're trying to remove ourselves from. But yet they also recognize that the hereditary heir is standing firm. So these nations I've spoken to are the following: Germany, France, Indonesia, Philippines, Japan. These are countries I've spoken to. Of course, to all the First Nations people as well. And we'll get that into that in time. So I want to reiterate, one is citizenship, a dual or a kingdom or what have you. I need to know what your positions are. And working as a government official, you'll be appointed by me. This is not an elective position. Until such time as we are fully established moving forward, I would like to have a time when we can open up the discussion for possibly a more democratic type government for people who might want to someday have presidents as opposed to kings. I'm not opposed to that. And the reason why I say that is because I know who I am. I know my bloodline, and I know that position I hold is not an election, it's through blood. And as someone said, a man of wisdom said that in time, when the kingdom's moving forward, the people may want their monarchical government in place. They may not want to have a democratic type of government. But as soon as we are developed and moving forward, we'll cross that bridge when it happens. But by law, restoring the kingdom is restoring what the kingdom was prior to the illegal overthrow of the kingdom. I want to repeat, by law, international law, and I can cite that for you if you want, you go back to what the kingdom was before. And that was during the time of the last monarch, who was my cousin, Queen Liliuokalani. And then from there, the Hawaii was a territorial government prior. First was a kingdom, became a territorial government, and then it became the illegal state of Hawaii, part of the 50th state in the Union of the United States. And I can say illegal because that's the truth. There's a tremendous amount of documents to substantiate that claim. So because we're a people that recognize the law and want to move within the spirit of the law, I say spirit, not the rules so much, but the spirit of the law. Because the spirit of the law is pure, it's good, it's honest. The rule of law only serves those that can either pay for it or manipulate it. So the law is not always fair, but then there are people who will stand up for the rule of law to become the spirit of the law that supports all people and not just a handful. And so that exercise, that assignment that I gave you folks was critical to my discussion with all of you before we go further into the agenda. So our publishing diplomatic, producing our diplomatic documents is also the steps in being a government of and for the people, a true lawful government. And creating passports and stuff is the easiest thing. Getting to diplomatic relationship with other countries is the key to be recognized as a government in perpetuity. And so these things are essential. And if there's any questions before I move on, let me hear them now. And I believe Abel had a question regarding dual citizenship. Abel?
Yes, Your Honor. You kind of mentioned it. You can't serve two kings, right? If there's a disagreement between the way the U.S. operates and the way the kingdom operates, we would ourselves have to choose our loyalty and stuff. And I just see the kingdom aligning with my own values and stuff much more, as America seems to be stepping away from what I value and what I find good each day. So I have a daughter who lives in Oregon half the time with her mom, and she lives in Hawaii as well. So I do think she may be a dual citizen. I've been born into America and am learning what it would be like to live in a kingdom again. So thank you for answering these questions.
Thank you. I want to say that, yeah, just one second. I like to say, I don't know what it's like to live in a kingdom because I haven't lived in a kingdom. Everything that I am doing has been in preparation for this. When I was asked to be the king, I refused it because I wasn't ready nor prepared. I didn't think I was mentally ready or intellectually ready. But for the fight, I was ready for. A fight I was ready for because I know the hardships our people suffer throughout the centuries and the false imprisonment of so many of our Hawaiians that went to prison only for standing up for what they believe. These people that, and I know a list of those individuals who were put in prison, but they also did silly things as well. But to your point, Abel, is that citizenship is one, it's a privilege to choose what you want to do in your life. How many people have that opportunity? No, they're either born in it or not born in it. But now everyone has an opportunity to choose what they want to do and how they see their life progressing for themselves, their children, and so forth and so on. But I will say to all of you that in all my studies and things I've learned from my kapunas, I refer to Lanny a lot because Lanny has been my guiding light in many things. He and I talked a long time over things. You may not know this, but some of you, Lenny wrote the Conscious Bible. And I refer to that because I think I know the Conscious Bible better than Lenny. And he wrote the darn thing because I studied it extensively. And it talks about, one thing that it talks about that I rather enjoy is actually being in contact with yourself, knowing who yourself is. And I think Socrates said that as well, to thyself be true. But now you have an opportunity to be a a subject of the kingdom, or remain a U.S. citizen, either way. To work in the government itself, you'll have to be in alignment with the kingdom's policies, the kingdom's governance, and so forth. And so, as I said, today's get honest time with yourself, with me, and with God. Okay, Jabbar, you had a question or statement?
Yes, Your Majesty. From the international law perspective, the Kingdom of Hawaii as a country has to be recognized by United Nations. Because the reason why I'm saying is at all the immigration control points between countries to country, there is a global list in which the immigration officers usually go through. So that recognition by United Nations is important before you start issuing the passport. I just wanted to bring it to your notice, Your Majesty.
Thank you. And I want to address that. I have been in dialogue with the United Nations, and the United Nations does recognize me as a true hereditary heir of the throne. And I would like to also step back a moment and just say these simple words, if it makes sense to you. The United States is not my governing authority. The United Nations is not. My governing authority is God and my people. That's my governing authority. And I will not succumb to any government or authority that would suppress, as they've done for this hundreds of years, where Hawaii has been captive for all these years. And the people, my people, was left homeless. Their lands taken through construction, to land development, through everything. For iwi kupunas, our bones that's buried in the ground, has been excavated, unknowingly supposedly, to build hotels on burial sites, sacred sites. That's unacceptable. And to go on and on and on would be unacceptable. You don't do that. And if any government is an enlightened government, they should know that principle. Unfortunately, they do not. But this kingdom does know what it's like to be enlightened. And that's why we move in the position and the steps we're taking. The United Nations, and as I've spoken to them on several occasions, although they recognize me, and I have told them that my authority does not come from you, Jabbar. And that's what I told them. My authority comes, and I repeat, from God, from my people. That's where it comes from. And as we move forward and the gathering of the people becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, their voices become stronger, then you have your nation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Barbara. Aloha.
Aloha. Your Majesty, in regard to this, I realize that the kingdom is on these islands, but you're still being inhabited by the U.S. government. How do you reconcile that? And how do you make a new treaty with the U.S. government so that they can remain on the island and that you then have the rights to run your kingdom from the islands?
Thank you for the question, and that's a good question. You have a sore on your knees or what have you, and you have a Band-Aid on it. If you move it slowly, it'll hurt more. But if you rip it off, it'll hurt less. Well, that's an analogy I want to give you as we move forward with the restoration, the full reclamation of the kingdom. And that is one, to follow the rules of law, the international law. I have a team of lawyers who I respect and I've consulted with as well. And Hawaii will be a non-aligned nation. And the reason it will be a non-aligned nation because we want to be indifferent, but yet still have our autonomy and still work in concert with all the nations and still be there to be part of the moving mechanism that each country have, because every country has something to offer each other, whether it's trades, whether it's goods, textiles, lumber, fish, whatever it is. and every country can work in harmony with all of that. I'm going to refer this to Maile Imana'onui, Lanny, to further answer that question. Lanny?
Okay, I think it's on now. Can you hear me?
Yes, aloha.
Aloha. Well, this is obviously one of the fundamental questions that we'll have to answer as to citizenship, dual or otherwise. And how do we convince the United States to leave? Barbara asks a great question. You know, how would you convince the United States to withdraw from Hawaii? And I think the answer is actually on the other side, which is you get to the recognition of as many nations as possible for the kingdom, to the point where it's too embarrassing, basically, for the United States to continue denying the rights of the kingdom. And that we are clearly an independent nation. We do not rely on any other nation to tell us what to do. We do rely on our leadership to try and answer these kinds of questions. There was mention of the rule of law, and whether the rule of law is actually going to be implemented or not is a question that's facing the whole world right now. There's chaos abroad where people are simply seizing power and doing whatever they want. That's not the kind of recognition we need. We need the recognition of legitimate nations that are engaged in friendly trade and communications with other nations. And we need to maintain our own sovereignty. And these will be unfolding as we go. There's no question that the current situation cannot stand. I mean, we're not going to continue to be occupied by a foreign nation that takes over our government. So I hope that responds in parts to your question, Barbara. If there's something more I can tell you, please let me know.
Yeah, I just see that Hawaii is the strategic position for the United States militarily, and I don't know that they would give up that position that easily. Also, you know, while we're watching what's happening with Greenland in reverse, the people of Greenland have put forward a referendum and voted on leaving Denmark. In that case, if you put forward a referendum to the people of Hawaii and to see what would happen, maybe that would give you a better idea of where the people are. But I don't know what the population is about. Of course, the king has a right to the kingdom, but once again, and I'm a middle of the road type of person, which is not exactly what the king is talking about, which is pulling off the Band-Aid. I know that because of this, I don't want, I would like to find a peaceful path for the kingdom to finally be realized. And I think recognition globally and becoming more and more of a presence and a personality and giving the king media exposure will bring this to light and help. But I don't see, with all of the very wealthy people on these islands, if they wouldn't throw money behind the US government to keep their rights to the land and to their investments. It's just a practical matter. And Your Majesty, you know, I'm here to support you. I'm just being very practical about it. And as Queen Liliuokalani, although her purpose was not to have bloodshed of her people, and there was not honor on the other side of the table, and so therefore the treaties were broken. But the fact is that we're in a different time and place. I just think that this is still a process, and it's just me voicing my opinion. This is still a process, and you've made great headway in the last 2 years that I've known you. But we have to be very careful because we need to protect you, the king, and make sure that you don't give the U.S. a reason to have a case against you. You know, you can spend time disproving something, but that's going to take you time after they make their case. And I'm just being careful. That's all.
I want to touch for a moment on the document that was recently received and issued in January by the Solicitor of the United States to the Secretary of the Interior, which extensively documents the rights of the kingdom.
Okay.
And takes a turn towards making it a nation within a nation. That's not our turn, that's their turn. So if we can build on this almost letter of recognition, I mean, it's a clear explanation of what's happened historically and where the legal power lies in this issue. I think that will help other nations to step forward and say, okay, we see that you're even legitimately endorsed by the United States, whether they're ready to withdraw or not, that recognition will come in stages. And we just passed one very critical stage, and that's this letter that was sent out by was sent to the Secretary of the Interior by the Solicitor of the United States. So these kind of building blocks make it possible to move closer and closer to the day when we can simply rip the Band-Aid off.
Okay, but that's great. And it would be, if it's possible to share part of that letter, or, redact it as much as you want, but that we have more knowledge about this. I like the idea of the nation within a nation, because then they feel that they still have some rights or privileges on the land. And I know that rubs the wrong way, and it might take another generation or two to realize what you truly want, Your Majesty. But Lanny, I think it's wonderful that you've all gotten this far. Those are my concerns. I just don't want to see upset or anything that would disturb, because of the spirit of aloha, because we are leading with our hearts here. And I think that our intention is for the best, for the culture of Hawaii to remain, and for the king to have his rightful position. So that's all I have to say about it. I just wanted to raise that issue because it's always been a concern of mine.
Well, thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Lenny. Before I call upon Michael, who had his hands up, I want to say that every step that I've taken, that Lenny and we have all taken, is leading to that point towards citizenship. In order for there to be a full recognition, you have to have people who recognize the kingdom from within the kingdom. You cannot have a kingdom established when the people within doesn't recognize the kingdom as being the governing source. And from that, the rest of the world will find that to be true. And we do have a tremendous amount of followers throughout Hawaii as well as the rest of the world. That being said, you mentioned something about wealthy people on the Hawaiian Islands. When a thief steals something, and the thief that themselves go ahead and invest that money, trade them, whatever they do, and make more money, does it make the money clean? It does not. So we have now a situation where people who have capitalized on the kingdom's land and its resources, they're wrong. And the only way I know how to do it is addressing it directly, that this was stolen illegally in 1893. And everything from there, when a thief came into your house, is returned back. It's called restitution. When a criminal does something, you have a board that returns, they call it the office. And it's called restitution, which means that the billionaires, the millionaires, whoever's there, do not come to the kingdom for any a settlement. but they go to the offending person or nation, and that offending nation will make right with their people. That's law, and that's international law. The kingdom is not responsible for doing anything because the kingdom is a victim. The kingdom is not the enemy here. The kingdom is a victim. And that being said, again, my cousin Leo Kalani did stand down because she didn't see any bloodshed, but she did something, although that's a beautiful thing that she did, was something more beautiful came out of it. It gave me now an opportunity here in 2025 to proceed forward based on the vision of love and aloha without bloodshed, and the numerous documents that's out there by people before me that educated the world on the unlawful theft of the kingdom. And that is the fact. But we are now much closer to that. And that's why we having now this discussion. And I'm glad, albeit may be hard for some of you to hear, but it's honest. And you need to know the steps that we're doing. But these steps are lawful steps. We're not advocating bringing up arms or doing anything stupid like that. We're advocating truth. And hence the reason why we're creating our indigenous court. Jabbar is working very hard in getting that court system in place. So we follow the law. And once you have the courts in place, everything in place, we are actually functioning as a governing force for good. Did that answer your question somewhat, Barbara?
Yes, thank you, Your Majesty.
You're welcome. Michael, you had something to say?
Yes, Your Highness.
Mike Crawford?
I had an opportunity to go back to the actual Department of Interior and sit down with folks and try and understand the basis of this. And what I mean by that is this letter. I put it inside of the chat for those that hadn't read it yet. It's just a simple link, but this is what it'll actually look like. It was done on January 16th, and it's specifically a legal opinion letter. In my perspective of it, it's a positive document, whereas the energy goes into it to basically outline and understand. But in all reality, they take some very hard lines and some hard perspectives. From my perspective, there's two topics at hand. One's around really alien laws, and one's around occupation of the land and a process. Historically, at least we talked about different goals. And what I've been tracking to is digital governance around identity, finance, dispute, citizenship, and dispute ties with the courts that His Majesty is talking about, census, constitution, genealogy, and voting. And then in this year, 2025, one or two of the cores are around Kealave. And you can look inside of the state of Hawaii, recognizes that this particular island, which was it's an island just below Lanai and west of Maui. You can see it from Maui, and I think you can even see it from the Big Island. It's north of the Big Island. But it's been bombed and it's been abandoned, and in the end, there's a lot to that particular island, because the state of Hawaii, in their own words, say that it would be given back to the Kingdom of Hawaii if the Kingdom of Hawaii organized. And that ties into really what I believe this letter states, and a potential plan for coexistence, a coexistence of the state of Hawaii and the Kingdom of Hawaii. The state of Hawaii and the United States of America does not have the right to say that the Kingdom of Hawaii does not exist, or did not exist, or does not exist in the future, whether that's through restoration or not restoration. And I believe that it's the right of the body that's here, and many others, but as they choose, like His Majesty talks about, it's the people's choice. But the thing that I feel we're missing within this body is really the Kanaka Maori, the core, of what the kingdom represented, the core of what the king represents, who he is, who his people are. And when I say his people, I don't want to do it in such a way that doesn't recognize that everyone on this call is all family and all connected, because we are. But there's a significance in the bloodline, particularly to Her Majesty here and all Kanaka Maori, and the ability to unify them first, and then this body and the world serves around them, I think is key and crucial. I think we're at a compelling event. I think Lenny really hit it on the head right. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of noise that's out there, but ultimately what's happening creates an opportunity for the kingdom to truly be recognized as an entity that's like, look at, you've got Russia that's taking over Ukraine. You've got China that's taking over Taiwan, whether people want to realize it or not. You've got the United States that's intending to take over Canada. And we're not even talking about Mexico or anything above the Panama Canal, or even talking about the Panama Canal. But you've got all these spinning plates. And while they're spinning, we can learn from the past and we can act for the future. And I think we can do it in such a way where, like the gal that was just on, she's so spot on. We've got to do it with the spirit of aloha. And these other islands, when we look at it, we're talking particularly around the national parks. I think what's happening right now is you will see a massive exodus. For instance, on the northern part of the 5 islands that most of humanity actually recognizes in the archipelago of islands on Kauai, there's a bird refuge. And along with these cuts that's been happening over the last 90 days, this bird refuge, which is a wonderful refuge. I've been there a couple of times. I even went there in the last couple of years. But it's run and it's managed by the federal government of the United States of America. And when the budgets were cut, 100% of their budgets were cut. Now, this island, they used to use it as a lookout point for some of the northern islands that were actually, give me just a quick second, some of the northern islands that were actually above that. And it's important to realize that as the U.S. goes through these different cuts, there's opportunities where Kanaka Maori could actually stand up and say, the national parks on these islands, on the Big Island, on Maui, etc., they're going to be run by local Hawaiians. Imagine if that was just the first step. We're not talking about the legal document that was sent in demanding payment for the occupation of the military in Pearl Harbor for like 50 grand a month or whatever it was. We're not talking about, that number's not accurate, by the way, it's a lot more than that. We're not talking about, pushing people out of the current islands. But I think as His Majesty totally hit on the head, there's 150 plus islands and people should not be homeless. On Oahu, the homeless ratio is crazy high, primarily not because of, well, there's multiple different reasons why. I mean, people just ship other people there because of the climate. But then a lot of the locals, they're pushed out of their house because of economic distress. They just can't cash flow through it. And it's by design. But it's not just necessarily by design for the Hawaiians. It's by design for humanity in general. And I believe that the Kingdom of Hawaii being able to stand up can actually stand up and organize against the secret combinations that are not only wanting confusion and separation between the kingdom, and not only that, but the different Hawaiians. There's 3 or 4 different environments that feel this same way and feel that it's treason against the kingdom to not stand up, to allow the occupation to be there. The United States of America recognizes that there is conflict and actual war. I don't want to say that in a negative context, but it's a wartime within the Hawaiian Islands. And there's a reason why the United Nations or the NATO organization doesn't actually protect the Hawaiian Islands, even though many say that the Hawaiian Islands are America and America was a part of NATO. So when we look at all of this, if we just look at it from 2 different topics, one around the country as it talks about with physical occupation, I don't believe that taking people from their homes and their businesses and saying goodbye is ever going to work. I think that peace and unity and the kingdom of Hawaii and the state of Hawaii coexisting in peace and allowing these national parks, because the national parks were taken over primarily in many ways to preserve, but they were sacred, very, very sacred. And I believe that if the right questions were asked to say, for instance, on Kauai with this bird refuge, if the right organization and the right way, not in force, were to ask to say, could we manage these? Could we put Hawaiians in and manage these within the kingdom? These are the things that we would accomplish. These are the budgets that we would use. And we have to make sure that they cash flow themselves. And I know that if the kingdom were given the rights to do it, people would come and it would cash flow itself. I've been to all the national parks, and all of them, the flow of the visitors would easily justify any kind of budget. We wouldn't need any United States of America funding. And if we just start there, and if we can actually manage the national parks on the 5 islands that the world recognize, the island of Hawaii, Kauai, Maui, Oahu, but Molokai is already done. And I believe Ko'olave is the right one for the next focus. But that's the topic on occupation. When we talk about the other topic around alien laws, chunks of this is already inside of the Hawaiian Constitution that was there. We've done just a draft. This is nothing that is specific, but this is a draft at alien laws that talks about, one, the difference between Hawaiian and American, but then how they can actually exist and coexist and work together. And there doesn't have to be a choice. I mean, in all reality, even though there's a difference between Hawaiian and American, you can still be both. But that's to be determined. That's for this body to, debate and go through what you feel is appropriate. This was originally shared, I want to say in November, but it was updated in December. And those are the two topics that I think are really what we're discussing. I do think we actually have a compelling event and a blessing within this opinion letter. And I went through the Department of Interior and I requested to try and see anything that represented the Kingdom of Hawaii or Hawaii as a state in general. Because when the Department of Interior building was built, they built out environments for all the different states. So there's 5 different departments: Bureau of Land Management, Indian Affairs, National Parks. And that's also why National Parks is under the Department of Interior. And I think if we just went to the Department of Interior, the same people that created this document, we could ask them, hey, cut the budgets, instead of them being forced and then having the pushback. Like if you look at that bird refuge in Kauai, the pushback that the federal government is getting is real. And I know they're getting it on lots of things too. So I think we could be a part of the solution and say, hey, let us take all the national parks and let us manage it. But I would push back on this body and say, us, the definition of us is actually not where it needs to be yet. The Kanaka Maori have to be the core and then aligned with His Highness, and then we can support that environment standing up. So I hope my words make sense, and I'll yield back at this point.
Thank you. Can you turn to?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we take the letter down so that we can
Yeah,
see each other?
Yes.
I'm just trying to find where it's at.
Also, that was a great subject matter you put together between the national parks and also Kaolave. Remember, on the burial grounds, the Department of Interior initially gave us the right to choose under lineal descent or cultural affiliation. We've talked about that. And like His Majesty talked about the variety of faiths involved in this. Let me give a little perspective on the Hawaiian faith. It took me many years to understand in the Hawaiian faith, like in all faiths, what's the subject of worship? The subject of worship in the Hawaiian faith is, like my father said, we don't worship anything with 2 feet in the shadow. We worship food. food is the staff of life. We have 4 elements we call gods as the foundation of that faith. So when we say molo kalima haka haka do opu, means if you don't put your hand in the soil, nothing comes forth. Why the puhunuas were sacred spiritual land bases. Puhunu Lehua in Oahu, Puhunua Pi'ilani in Maui, His Majesty's line. Mano Kalani Po in Kauai. These are spiritual land bases, afraid of no war, of anything, strictly for the preservation of a garden on that island for 7 generations. So you see why the concept in Hawaiian thinking in the area of religious faith is about food. I didn't get that right away, being raised as a Catholic and then studying in the temple later. So understand Kaho'olawe becomes very significant because where have the indigenous people have the right to practice that faith? Well, Atahuna Sam Lono and the generation, my generation with the Kaho'olawe Ohana movement, you know, to the love of the land, Aloha Aina. So, you know, here you have the federal government going to the University of Hawaii and saying, going to pictures like Professor John Charlo and saying, hey, who is this kahuna that's, you know, asking for access to rededicate a temple on the island that we're bombing? And the university said, well, he's the person we go to for information on traditional beliefs. So Sam Lono was given that permission. The first traditional practitioner, you can call him shaman, you can call him, but he's Tahuna Palitu. He opened the temple to the ocean, the first of the 4 foundations for the staff of life. Ocean. So you see there's a great indigenous benefit of land, the purpose of it, the righteousness of it, is to preserve the staff of life. The ocean takes the life and gives life. The sun takes life and gives life. The earth gives life and takes life. The freshwater rivers take life and give life. So, you know, it's very important that on that significant moment to rededicate that temple, the significance was not to rebirth the culture, but the foundation of a culture, it's faith. And that is what's so significant to our purpose as a people. That the land is preserved in righteousness in this manner.
Thank you, Plani. That is well put. I
So
wanted to,
that's what we have as that is the gift that, remember, we have tremendous culture, but sometimes culture can put you in a box. You must be careful with that.
thank you,
This
Plani.
is why the first time that I feel the purpose of supporting His Majesty and the bloodline and where it comes from and where it has arrived.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I wasn't trying to stop you. I was just saying thank you. That's you're spot on, but thank you. Michael, thank you for your input. I received that letter and I sent it off to my legal team to analyze as well. We have many reasons and many opportunities to do what's right. The question now remains, do we have the heart to make it happen? Do we have the strength and intestinal fortitude to stand firm? And no leader in his right mind should take a position to move forward if he or she was not committed to that. I am committed. And so is my entire family. They're committed to this. and so are many, many people throughout Hawaii. And as Lenny put it, and everyone else said, we now have a foundation that is very strong. We need to move forward on that foundation and continue forward. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Lenny. Thank you, Michael. And and thank you, Abel. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to call on our Chief Justice to weigh in on the legalities of this. Chief Justice?
The legalities of, we've talked about a lot of things, and I'm not being facetious. Specifically, what would you like me to talk about?
Our position to remove the stain of the illegal occupation to a kingdom government.
Legally speaking, the United States itself has already given, in my opinion, has already given us everything that we need to be able to do so. They've admitted to it. It's put into public law within the United States legal system, passed by Congress, signed into law by President Clinton. And I do not want to give the feeling to anybody that my perspective is that we need to be beholden to the US law to do that. Rather, I'm just saying that as an opposing party, in essence, I'm obviously an attorney. As an opposing party in this, the opposing party has already admitted fault and that they have no right. The problem that exists is what Barbara spoke to. You have trillions and trillions of dollars spent by probably the US government in some form or another, but by private individuals and companies and entities as well. And that's really where the difficulty lies. These people will, that have money tied up in things, will lobby to be able to maintain the status quo because they have money tied up in the system of, if you will, the land. Just the rubber meets the road, real world practicalities of the land and the things that have been built on the land and placed on the land wrongfully. But from a legal standpoint, the opposing party has already admitted that they're at fault, that from the inception, the actions that are part and parcel to the entire foundation of what has been illegally and inappropriately built. From the moment that Queen Liliuokalani was wrongfully dethroned or authority was taken away, the very first actions, the inception of all of this is admitted being illegal, unconstitutional, and wrong. And as far as annexing the land into the United States, I'm not talking about statehood, I'm talking about just the annexation of the land, some form of territory with provisional government that was beholden to the United States, that's admitted as wrongful. And statehood itself, process of Hawaii being made and turned into a US state has been admitted. That can only be done by treaty, where the existing government, let's use Canada as an example. Trump is continuing to talk about how Canada would make the greatest 51st state, in the country for United States. Well, if that were to ever happen, it would have to be done per international law by treaty, and that country would have to go through whatever legal processes it has to go through, a referendum or something under Canadian law to approve that. And that's the United States has recognized that the only way under the United States Constitution that government and that they over, which the Kingdom of Hawaii did at the time of Queen Liliuokalani, the only way for the United States to bring a geopolitical region into statehood is by treaty, and that has never happened. And that was actually argued very vehemently in the hearings in Congress by one particular either representative or senator, I can't remember which. It's in the document that I've sent to you guys in the past. he argued very, very strenuously that the only way that we can bring a geopolitical area of land and a sovereign country into statehood in the United States is by treaty. And that's never happened. Beyond that, we have the public law that was passed, signed into law by President Bill Clinton, that admits that all this is unconstitutional, illegal. And so my position is absolutely, unequivocally, we're legally in the right. The ability is there. The world stage, my understanding is the world stage has accepted His Majesty as the rightful heir to the monarchy, and the Kingdom of Hawaii is the monarch of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And that's the only other element that in my mind is necessary to nail down in any hypothetical. I mean, a country it can be recognized that a country has a right to be its own country and that it was stolen, but then you have to also recognize and determine to whom or to what body of people do we hand these reins over to. And I think that has been established by the kingdom itself, by the individuals that came to the king, who were the hereditary heirs of the body of people. For any of you that aren't aware of this, anciently there was a body of people within the Kingdom of Hawaii whose duty it was to, at all times, identify who the next correct, appropriate monarch with the rightful claim to the throne. And I want to say, I could be mistaken in this, and Your Majesty, I would ask you to correct me if I'm wrong about this. My understanding is that body carried out its function while the current monarch was living, so that long before the current monarch dies, it's already known and established who the next rightful heir to the throne is, which is an amazing thing to me, because when you think of the European model of monarchy, that was never predetermined before the death of a king or a queen, a reigning king or queen. Rather, the monarch would die, and then, essentially internal wars would ensue between different claimants to the throne as to who had the strongest, claim to the throne. That didn't happen in Hawaii because there was a body of people whose sacred duty it was, is my understanding, and if I'm wrong about anything, please, anybody correct me, whose sacred duty it was to identify who the rightful next heir to the throne was. And so there was never contention or dissension over that issue. And the rightful heirs to the people who held those positions at the time of Queen Liliuokalani's disposition, off of the throne of the Kingdom of Hawaii because of the actions of the United States, their direct descendants were the people who came to His Majesty and told him, we've done the genealogical research and you're the rightful hereditary heir. You're the person on earth who has the rightful claim to the throne. Your Majesty, would you please correct me in anything I've said that's incorrect?
No, you're correct. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, the two issues in my mind legally are absolutely nailed down. The opposing force, the United States, has admitted that they're at fault and that the state of Hawaii exists illegally and unconstitutionally. That's already determined. If we walked into the U.S. Supreme Court, if it were ever allowed to be heard by the Supreme Court, I don't see how the U.S. Supreme Court could have any option other than to say this was done wrongfully per international law. And the international law that body of law has been being built for hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years. In essence, it states that one country cannot go and affect another country within its borders. That's the definition of sovereignty. Obviously, the U.S. Marines and the U.S. businessmen that deposed Queen Liliuokalani, they violated international law. And decades down the line, the United States allowed that to continue in the form of annexing the Kingdom of Hawaii and its lands into the lands of the United States, and then causing the Kingdom of Hawaii or a portion of the Kingdom of Hawaii because it's the Kingdom of Hawaii is the whole archipelago, which the state of Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken, the state of Hawaii does not include all of the islands of the archipelago. Again, am I correct or incorrect? That's correct. Okay. So the Kingdom of Hawaii is actually larger. Well, and there's an interesting idea. I'm just going to put this out there. Has the kingdom always, from a land perspective, always continued to exist in that the United States has only exercised control over a portion,
That's correct.
land-based, of the geopolitical regions of the Kingdom of Hawaii. There are still these other islands that are part of the archipelago. And I don't know how those islands are governed, or do they have their own governors? Or are they all considered separate sovereigns? I don't know.
The United,
Go ahead.
the United States does recognize them as under their control, but you're correct. It's not under the state of Hawaii's control. It's a separate governing body. And you're spot on with your approach and your thought.
That's the power that we have, because the United States has control over it, not the state of Hawaii. That's a big difference there.
Mhm.
So is it regarded like Puerto Rico? Is it a territory?
Not even
So
that.
Not even that. No,
the U.S. just says we have control of this, and that's
That's
it.
it.
That's
that's
okay.
it. Nothing
Well,
else.
that's a real that's a conundrum under international law. Wow. Okay, I did not know that. But the
Isn't
point
it
I'm making is
national
that the
fish
kingdom.
reserve?
Oh, please go ahead.
Isn't it a national fish reserve now?
That's all it is.
Well, that's what I think under Obama that was done. The whole NOAA.
Well, they clearly don't have their house in order.
In other words, we're in a strong position based on, and thank you, you folks. I was going to come to that. Thank you, Chief Justice. I was coming to that point. And that's why I brought up the assignment about the archipelago. Behind me is the flag that my mother created before death. And the tarot you see back there is the genealogy of the Hawaiian people. The Hawaiian believe it's the Kumalipo, the beginning of time. And all that dot you see is the entire archipelago of the kingdom. Everything's right there. That's our power. That's our strength. Because the 8 islands is controlled by the state of Hawaii. It's now recognized as the 50th state in the Union of the United States. And the other 100 plus islands was controlled by the federal government just because, and not by the state of Hawaii.
Wow.
One other
That
I
thing,
wonder,
That's impressive.
do we know if any, have there ever, this is the conspirator, there's a reason that we have the word, conspiracy or conspiracy theories. And the sad thing is that often conspiracy theories end up not being conspiracies, but being actual
Facts.
existing things where people, the word conspiracy for some people has this connotation of it's not legitimate, it's not actual, it's not real. But look in criminal law and conspiracy to do anything, conspiracy to murder, conspiracies exist all the time. Are things being done on these islands? Because what I'm seeing now, for the first time actually, is you've got this highly, highly unregulated area of land, kind of like Antarctica, right? Are things being done on these islands that are just kind of off the grid, nobody knows of? Is there any kind of
Yes,
testing of animals? Is there testing of biologicals, weapons? Is there anything like that?
well, let me just go first of all. Midway Island was used during World War II, right? Midway Island is
Right.
part of the archipelago. Kur Island and the other Polynesian islands was used for quote for growing food of sorts and other things that's there. And whatever else the United States is doing there, I don't know. So I cannot engage in that discussion. I do know for a fact that as the Mo'i king, that my goal is it's not just the 8 islands, but all the other islands there that truly belong to the Kingdom of Hawaii and so well documented globally and on maps, etc., that the kingdom had. Much of the islands was once called the Sandwich Island. A lot had the sandalwood, and the sandalwood was harvested. And that's what the United States did. They harvested, that I do know is a fact. They harvested the sandalwood much for profit and so forth and so on. And the Europeans did all that. So those islands were used primarily for economic reasons for these European countries as well as the United States. But they kept only the main 8 islands, one because it had a lot of whaling at the time. Whaling was very, very essential to the Hawaiian Islands. And then the 5 individuals, the 5 people, they began growing sugar cane, and sugar became one of the staples. Then, of course, pineapple, and because of its soil. So when they took the islands, they looked at the economic value or what the islands could give. So these islands were bigger. They weren't atolls. Some of the islands we're talking about are atolls. They don't have very high mountains. They're kind of flat, but they're still nonetheless part of the archipelago. But anyway, that is where we're headed to.
So that pretty much concludes my response to your question, Your Majesty. The long and the short of it is, we're absolutely in the right. The fact that what needs to happen, but international, and I would even say what the United States law requires, if it were actually applied honestly and truly, is under both international law and U.S. law, is that the Kingdom of Hawaii needs to be put back into the position, legally, needs to be put back into the position it was in before Queen Liliuokalani was removed. In other words, the monarchy takes back full power and control of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And it's been nailed down and identified and made known who the rightful heir to the throne is, and monarch who has already been coronated and is the reigning king of the Kingdom of Hawaii, which is His Majesty King Silla.
What if there was sorry.
Thank you, Joshua.
Your Majesty, before we jump away from myself, I would just like to let you know, I did put some comments in the chat. Primarily, it's something that would require your thought and allowance. It's on the subject of dual citizenship or single citizenship. I proposed an idea at your leisure if you'd look at that. And then I'd like to point out that both Marcia and Ms. Cox have their hands up, and Michael wanted to say something to it. So I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Chief Justice before we move on?
I'd like to follow on to it because I feel like we're really onto something. If we look at the context of what happened in 2024, the state of Nevada had the conspiracy theory, it started with, of that the lands were never really given to the state. And they went down a process of proving that and then ownership being controlled by it. The gentleman behind it had a documentation that was being filmed, and he was murdered in the middle of it. This was July of 2024. Fast forward, the state of Utah and the state of Wyoming all went into full lawsuits with the federal government of the United States of America to take their lands back because they found under the same thing that was happening in Nevada, it wasn't legally occupied, controlled, and conveyed. It's the same topic that's being discussed here with the state of Hawaii, which I believe, even if we didn't say it's fictitious, and we went in leading with a document similar to the state of Utah that went to the federal government just within the last 4 months, maybe 5 months. And we basically said, give the land back, do what is right. And you as a king, the body gives the land back to the people that have built on it, because there's a lot of people that have built their life, their livelihood, their families, their whakapapa, their generations on these lands. And if the Kingdom of Hawaii, in its rightful ability, were to gift that back to them and create peace, a formal restitution and peace, I believe that with what's going on with society right now, because not only are the states approaching the federal government in 2024 legally, like full-blown lawsuits, but in 2025, you're going to start seeing the federal government divesting responsibility. And like, look at what's happening with the Department of Education. And I don't want to get into the details because I know that can stir a hornet's nest, but they're going to start cutting budgets federally and giving it back to the states, giving it back to people that have the responsibility. And as that gentleman talked about food, 100 years ago, every single person was fed by the food that was grown on the islands and the visitors. Now 90% of the food has to be imported. We will, as humans, comply if our stomachs tell us to. If we're hungry, we will do what's needed. But if the 700,000 acres of arable land were given back to grow food on, whether it's on the 5 islands we're talking about or the rest of the islands. And that's another thing. If you look at the actual islands, if you literally look at them on a GPS, whether it's with Google Earth, Google Maps, or others, if you look closely, you'll find that they're actually blotted out. They're literally blotted out. These other islands are in size equal to Maui and others. They're large islands. Are they as tall? No, but could they grow food? Yeah. Do other people live on them? Yes. The Robinsons family was one that does. But the point being is there can be unity through the spirit of aloha, but I think the leadership has to come from His Highness, which he's doing, and asking these questions and guiding in this way. We can literally come up with a plan for the new leadership within the Department of Interior to say, please do what is right, make the past right, and let the kingdom make the future right. If we look at what's happening, like with these wealthy folks, I'll be specific, Larry Ellertson. Larry Ellertson basically purchased all of Lanai, the whole island. And I won't say whole, I'll just say a large portion.
Well, I met him,
That-
Michael. I met him. And I did tell him the island of Lanai will be returned back to the kingdom.
So you provided him notice.
I did.
Yeah. So
I did meet him, and that did happen, but I
But the
need to move
bigger
on.
the bigger issue here is a quorum. If it's okay, Your Highness, just one more point, and I'll literally. Larry Ellerson is leading a $500 billion unification, or I would say centralization of all of humanity's health. So their biological data, their identity data. So the Real ID, he manages all of those with the Oracle systems. And literally, I believe all of the financial data will all link into one system that will centrally control not just the United States of America, but the rest of the world with major systems. That is a massive thing that we need to stand up against and create an alternative system to in parallel, which is the system that I believe can be the fabric for the Kingdom of Hawaii to be able to be facilitated, not just globally, but digitally, and it can exist worldwide. And that's why, well, I'll stop there. So, Your Highness.
We'll move forward on that. Dr. Cox, you had your hand up. I'm sorry. Aloha.
Okay, obviously, everyone speaks on the Mandarin Constitution or economy or things like that, and I speak on things like disaster relief, disease control, ecological importance. Therefore, I think when we're actually concentrating with the kingdom, we should take into account that throughout Polynesian time, it has always been the entire archipelago, not just one island, not just 2 islands. As far as my importance goes, all 152 islands, atolls, reefs are all important. They have ecological importance, they have military importance, they have importance for disease control, disaster control, self-sustainability, nuclear armament. So therefore, I think we need to not discount the other smaller islands, but when we're actually thinking about things, we need to see the wider picture as well, and how all of the life beings, all forms of life is important to the kingdom. After all, we are going with what is close to heart, what is close to home. And when everything started throughout the Polynesian times, importance of wildlife, importance of ecological things, importance of
I'm losing connection. Dr. Cox, I cannot hear you. Lost connection. I cannot hear you.
They are protected species. So, and nice that was and
I cannot hear you. The connection is bad. Can you check your side, please? While you're doing that, who else had their hands up? Oh, Marcia, please.
can you hear me?
1 second. You're
Can you hear me?
not good. Yeah, I can't hear you. Marcia?
Yes.
Marcia,
We
please.
should concentrate on every single one of them.
Oh, there we go. Marcia?
Thank you, Your Majesty. I want to respectfully take a look at where all this conversation is starting from, looking at the systems, looking at the kingdom, looking at the land, looking at building a government, and I've looked all over the globe and finding that the whole globe is occupied by military intelligence, by military occupation. From day one, we've come into an occupied territory. And in what I've seen in my discovery and my research is that the system is based on honor and dishonor. And as we come in, we're actually submitted into a public trust that's called the administration in the United States and in other territories. It literally is a public trust. And we're entered in through an identity called the birth certificate. That birth certificate becomes the incompetent duty of the government. All authority of government comes from the consent of the governed. So as we come in, our parents literally abandon us to the administration of the state or the federal government. And the federal government in the United States is a nation inside of a nation. The United States is the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. and the forts and arsenals that are under the exclusive jurisdiction of the United States. There's concurrent jurisdiction, which not only implies, but shows that each one of the states has their own separate and distinct jurisdiction. There are people who are going and what they're calling revesting themselves from the energy of that birth certificate. That birth certificate is literally what traps our consent into the administration of the public trust. And when we don't understand that we have that link and our energy and our resources, when we turn of legal age and we're no longer considered a minor incompetent, and we don't come in in 7 years of our gaining the age of majority, we've left our estate and our pledge of our energy to that state that's holding that birth certificate. We see that in naturalization. We see that in immigration. We see the political implications of it on the surface, where it's going from nation to nation, but we don't see the economic implications of the transfer of the value of that life and the value of that section of the public trust to the new nation. We don't see that in our economics. And because all we are focused on is the political condition. And so when what the Department of Interior, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, all those things are separate trusts inside of a much larger trust that's managed, and you'll see in Title 50, which definitely shows it's military occupation. But in Title 50, there's one section that describes the common law trustee for all of this, and it is the Attorney General. The Attorney General is the alien property custodian. And until we individually remove our pledge of our life and the function and the economic value that has been attributed to our life and our livelihood, until we claim that or place it with another nation, we are in dishonor trying to build a nation with a pledge to another nation. So on the surface, the nations that I've seen that are trying to build, and why people get beat up in the process, basically, is what the government calls in Title 18, Section 371, conspiracy to defraud the United States. So there's a process of revestment where we come in and say, yes, I'm a live being. I'm claiming the value of my life, and I'm placing it someplace else besides with the alien property custodian in Washington, D.C., the Attorney General. So that now becomes my pledge to wherever I'm bringing my value, that is the consent of the governed, that sees the lineage, and the nation and the relationship with one another, that brings our right to say we're a separate nation. So that there's a much deeper cut that happens inside of the whole structure. I'm seeing people who are sending affidavits and their passport with an affidavit saying, I was born in Iowa. I am an Iowan. I'm not a U.S. citizen. Their passport changes, and the designation on it is now an Iowan inside the relationship of the United States. It's a separate nation inside of a nation, basically a state inside of a nation. And there are recognitions for that. But unless we bring that and sever ourselves from the pledge of our economic value to the United States, we fundamentally are creating a dishonor and a dishonor and a defrauding until we take our value and then place it with the Kingdom of Hawaii. So there's more than the economic. We're trying to make good coins. We're trying to say we're this, and we still have that economic, that pledge of our life and our sacred soul and our sacred energy to the United States through the occupied territory. And until we take that back and place it someplace else, we're going to have a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What you said has
I
value.
yield.
No, thank you. What you said is value. And you're talking about UCC code and straw man. And
I'm talking about the
And when we turn legal age of incompetence, unless we claim that birth certificate and the value back to ourselves, we're still considered an incompetent minor in the public trust and incompetent to make the decisions we're trying to make.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Barbara, you had your hand up?
Yes, well, I have several topics, and I know that you're going to call on me for the Treasury, but this is the best conversation I think this council has had to date, and because we're all very much engaged. I want to start out by saying that King Kamehameha left from Bora Bora and went across the islands to reach the main island. And so therefore we can look at that as a pathway that the king had started from Bora Bora, and we can, I don't know where it is in the archipelago, but if we could define that as a starting point, why he went across the islands and to go to the mainland would be important for us to understand. And I'm going to jump around here because there were so many wonderful things said. And thank you, Michael and Lanny and Joshua and Marcia. That was great. The parks, I think taking over the programs is a brilliant idea, and we should make that a program for us to find out how much money is going to be needed for that takeover, so that we're supporting something that's part of the natural the income for the islands, and that we can employ people on the islands and engage them. So that's another thing. But here's a bigger concept to what's being discussed here is, and at first I thought maybe we need to get insurance guarantees in place. One, for the people who want to leave behind their citizenship and join the Hawaiian Kingdom. But the fact is that most of the time when you want to leave the US citizenship, you have to pay all your back taxes, and you have to guarantee that you're paying your back taxes. And so if we put up an insurance guarantee for everybody's back taxes, and we put up a bond against the what would be considered the loss for the US government for us to depart, then there is a method for us to point to, and would choose international insurance companies. Maybe we'd choose a reinsurance company to be backed by a number of the international insurance companies, so that we couldn't be stopped in the process of doing this. So that's also another place that we need to look at. Because they're going to, the one place they are going to go is this conspiracy to defraud. And I think that that's an important issue. So now we've all waited for and I'm now going to move into Treasury issues. We've all waited for this finances to come in, and this is a global effort involving 209 countries, and everybody is waiting for the big moment for the funding in which we get to participate in a small way. But in the meantime, there are other things going on, and there are opportunities when there's this much chaos and change in the banking system. We have a lot of opportunity right now. And I've been seizing the moment, so to speak, with other people to direct funds for project finance. And I think this was a bit of a watershed moment for me, because I came to the realization that we didn't have to wait as long as we have been. So then in looking and moving forward, we have to decide what the different departments are that are going to need financing, and who is going to run and head this, so that they can tell me how much is needed for each department, such as we've just been talking about the, we've been talking about the, oh boy, I have pages here going on. Hold on a second, everybody.
While you're looking for that, I'll just state that the national parks in the United States of America falls under the Bureau or the Department of Interior, which I'm currently have accountability for within the Kingdom of Hawaii. And I've visited all of the national parks on all the different current 5 islands. And I believe they don't even need a budget. They could cash flow themselves day one if we were given the opportunity for Kanaka Maori to truly service them. And I think they could do a much better job than they currently are doing. But did you find your notes?
No, I'm talking about the departments, the one department which the king mentioned, His Highness mentioned, which was the department for the, actually it falls under Lanny's, the legality, the legal governance, and the accountability and diplomacy and all of that area.
It's the legislative branch.
Right, thank you. And that's right. Okay, and I also have a straightforward legal department for all of the,
Justice.
yes, thank you, Your Majesty. And then, of course, we have the accounting, treasury divisions, and we have cultural divisions, which for us is very important because the spirit of Aloha does exist here, and we look to the kahunas and the kapunas to create that guidance for us in these steps that we're taking, such as today. That was very important for us to hear about food and remind us where our spirit lies. So so I think what I need, and what Your Majesty, what I need is direction on the departments, and then who is going to be making some sort of budget for operations for the rest of this year. So that way, when monies do arrive, that they're allocated correctly in terms of importance. And then also we can begin to look at all of the other issues like salary and healthcare and all of the things that come along with just living. That's where I am right now. And Your Majesty, I yield the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Lenny, it's your time now. Lenny's going to be discussing the chaos worldwide, and his 1 hour thoughts, and then we'll listen from Lenny. Lenny, please.
Thank you. Before I get into that, there's one historical note that I think is worth remembering, which is that the Department of Justice in the United States government conducted a review of all the laws that were pertinent to annexation and found that there was no constitutional authority in the United States Constitution for annexing the kingdom to the United States. So let me just state that again. The Department of Justice of the United States government did its own research on what authority was used to bring the kingdom into the United States and found that there was no such authority. So from the very beginning, the United States has acknowledged that it did not have a legal right to take the kingdom. What I want to do today is just talk about some of the issues we face. And bear with me at the beginning here. I want to just go over the simple science of climate. The biggest threat to human civilization, I believe, is climate chaos. That threat is a result of a simple scientific process. Sunlight enters the Earth's atmosphere and is reflected back into the atmosphere. Some of the reflected light is absorbed by gases in the atmosphere. These are commonly called greenhouse gases. The primary source of greenhouse gases is the burning of fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal. That trapped heat warms the atmosphere. The warmer atmosphere increases the amount of moisture the atmosphere can hold. Among the effects of this global warming are droughts in areas where evaporation dries up the land, and floods where the retained moisture falls as heavier than normal rain. The oceans are also absorbing heat from the atmosphere. That trapped energy produces more powerful hurricanes. As the ocean warms, it also expands. That expansion produces higher storm surge with massive damage along the coastal areas. The impacts also come from more complex processes. As the planet warms up, the insects are able to survive in areas that were previously too cold. Millions of acres of forests are lost as the insects move into new territory. The collapsing forests fuel wildfires, which increase the heat trapping gases in the atmosphere. So these are all processes that reiterate where we're headed if we don't do something different. These and other impacts of global warming cause billions of dollars in damage each year. These impacts are made worse by an extensive campaign that denies global warming is even happening. Funded by the fossil fuel industry, this campaign seeks to convince people that global warming is a hoax. The campaign's design is to mislead people into turning away from the truth of climate change and embracing the idea that it's a hoax. Unfortunately, this disinformation campaign seriously interfered with the development of policies and practices that could have been responsive to the challenge. Now the hour is very late for an effective and comprehensive response. To the contrary, the human family is still adding new greenhouse gases to the atmosphere every day while discouraging the deployment of renewable energy. Then there is the war between the human family and the natural world, because that really is what you see is a war. Only recently did the term sustainable become a mainstream topic of discussion. While there are different meanings to that term, the most common would be take only what is needed and leave enough for those coming after. Within the Hawaiian community and the Native American cosmology, the commitment is to make decisions today based on what is needed for the next 7 generations. Instead, we see the world being run on how much money is accumulated in the next quarter. The needs of the next generation are not even part of the discussion. The needs of the natural world found in healthy ecosystems are also ignored. The robber barons now in charge of human civilization would do well to reconnect with natural law, which contains such guidance as the following. Those who pollute their life support system go extinct. That's the future that's being chosen by the fossil fuel people for everybody else. The evidence of disconnection from the natural world is everywhere. Recently, there was an article about microplastics in human brains. These are tiny particles of plastic that result from the breakdown of plastics. Recent research found a cup full of such particles in human brains. What are the short-term and long-term effects of such exposure to chemicals? We do not know. Are we taking action to stop any further plastics pollution? To the contrary, the plastic manufacturers are building new plants to produce yet more plastic pollution that will then break down and enter the human ecosystems from different places. There's a pattern that emerges. If the extraction of products is profitable, then regulating or prohibiting that product will generally be a difficult undertaking, just as the fossil fuel people now have tried to put themselves outside the law and endanger all of humanity. The natural world is not pursuing this war. The human family is. So when we're talking about peace, we need to make peace between the human family and the natural world. That's one of our goals. Let me shift the focus for the moment to the actions of the robber barons. This is a war between wealthy oligarchs and the rest of the human family. 2 federal judges have now ruled that the firing of thousands of federal employees was illegal and requires their reinstatement. That was clear from the very beginning. The oligarchs made one serious error. The law requires that when a federal employee is fired, the employee has the right to know details of why she's being fired and provided an opportunity to contest the firing. That is what the law means by due process. The oligarchs skipped that step and went straight to firing without providing any process at all. A federal judge had no problem ruling that such firings are illegal. Now we are saddled with the chaos of reinstating thousands who lost their jobs because the oligarchs paid no attention to the law. Undoubtedly, those fired and reinstated will have a good case for lost wages and other damages from the government or the oligarchs. So it's not going to save anybody any money to reduce all these firing, all these people who were fired, if they can't recover what they lost. We can add that impact to the impact of the tariffs war initiated by Trump. His ignorance of economics and how tariffs work may cause a worldwide recession. As we watch the climate disasters multiply, we will know that the oligarchs also ignored the law, the natural law, which guides all life on this planet. They ignored the law because they are outlaws. They belong in jail. Unfortunately, we are left with Trump and Musk basically running the government with little that can be done to stop them, let alone limit their actions. So these are some of the concerns that I have. We can all make our own list. I could probably list 40 more problems we'd face. But the bottom line is we are in a very tumultuous time where the ground underneath us is eroding. And we need to step up and say clearly what the problem is. We can't avoid saying what the problem is just because the problem is very powerful people. In fact, standing up to very powerful people is an essential challenge to us as a democracy. So that's my thoughts for today that I wanted to leave with you. We have a wonderful group here trying to address these problems. And I trust that as time goes on, we will find some solutions to this. I'm hoping that the Congress will actually step up and make some moves that will shift the discussion into more productive areas than simply documenting the chaos. Thank you for your time and attention. I think I lost it.
Your mute button's on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Lanny. I'm sorry. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Lanny or Alina Kaunui?
Gladys, what do you foresee as the future for the islands then?
You know, it's very difficult to say. And what will be the attitude of the oligarchs towards the kingdom and its independence? Right now, we see an administration that's trying to reach out and take additional countries under its wing, as if they were just pawns in a little game. The people of
Canada? Greenland?
The people of Canada don't want to be part of the United States. They made that very clear. But that hasn't stopped the administration, the United States administration, from pursuing basically the destruction of Canada. They want to destroy the infrastructure of Canada so it would be easy to take over and pull in to be the 51st state of the United States. Greenland doesn't want to be part of the United States. They too are being threatened. This expansion is classic old school imperialism. That whatever the biggest country on the planet wants, it takes. And we have to simply live with it. I hope we'll see more people standing up to it. There's going to be, the real action is going to be at the state and local level, because the federal level has already immersed itself in illegality. So that's part of what I see happening for the kingdom. I'm actually cautiously optimistic here. I think that the letter we received, the copy we received of the letter from the solicitor to the Secretary of the Interior is a giant step forward. We can now go to any nation on the planet and say, look, here is the United States explanation of what happened here. You start with the apology resolution and you move on to the actions being taken now with this letter. And you have basically a complete picture of all you need to know as to why the nation should be restored. And I think that the more productive steps that can be taken towards reaching out to other nations and asking them to recognize the kingdom the better. We have to understand what is effective as well. If I remember correctly, we've tried to reach out to many nations and we haven't gotten positive responses. We need to revisit how we're approaching them and find a way to make a connection. Maybe we want to start with those nations that had treaties with the kingdom and go to those nations and say, look, you had a treaty with us, we were independent, and we lost our independence because you didn't stand up for us when the United States was trying to take us over. Maybe those countries will have a conscience about what has been done to the kingdom and make room for the kingdom to come in and be recognized again. That's a little bit of what I see happening.
Thank you, Lenny. I need to respond to Lenny's statement here. I personally have reached out to many countries out there. At first, I made many calls, by the way. It wasn't one call, it was many calls throughout the months and then years. They did not want to oppose the United States out of fear that the United States will sanction them, take their money, and force them into servitude to the United States. And that's what the United States do very well. And and I kept calling. And then finally, I did get positive responses. And I hope in the coming days that there will be treaties between myself and them. But that's still an ongoing thing where I need to make them comfortable that we are following the rules of law. We're following international law. We're following natural law. Natural law is a very interesting topic. What does natural law mean? Is it the elements and so forth and so on? Natural law is your hereditary law, your from where you come from. Barbara mentioned that Kamehameha came from Bora Bora. There actually is no real evidence to actually where Kamehameha came from. Some say from Samoa, some say from other places. Needless to say, the Kamehameha didn't establish the archipelago. Historically, that was set up by Kamehameha Ailuau of Maui. And the archipelago was long in place before Kamehameha came and was armed with British armament and sailors and so forth and so on to take the Hawaiian Islands. The history of Hawaii, unfortunately, is laced with some truth and no truth. Like in anything in history, some truth, no truth. And we need to find a way to navigate through that and just speak the truth. And the truth will be hard to accept, but eventually people will get it and they will accept it. And what Marcia said about the paths, the birth rights, the birth certificate is absolutely correct. And the government has used that for their personal gain. And that child comes into debt, not knowing that they come into debt already. So Marcia is correct regarding the birth certificates and so forth. And Lenny, speaking about climate change and the greenhouse and the gas, the oil, gas, and coal, and what the fossil fuel companies are doing is real. The question is, what do we do? How can the kingdom get involved? There are all these issues facing us, and all I can say is one step at a time. A wise man once said, "I'm not here to speak ill of any man, but to speak of a vision, a future for my people." You know who said that? My dad. My dad said that. He said, "I'm not here to speak ill of any man, but to speak of a vision, a future for my people." And then he said, "Son, take care of the people." And he said this before he died. So, and that's what we're doing here today. There's one thing I want to assure all of you, that every step I make and have taken has been preyed upon and very calculative, because I I wish to cause no ill or no wrong to anybody. But I need to go back to where we started. Citizenship. You need to make a decision so we can move forward with the departments that Barbara mentioned. There's the House of Nobles, there's the DOJ, there is there's the Minister, there's the Foreign Affairs side there's the Interior side, there's all this stuff that need to be properly funded. But then there's a few people whom I've already appointed. And those people I've appointed are your citizens. Now you have to make a choice as to what you want to do. Citizenship, and as our Chief Justice pointed out, we do have a right to move forward. Although there's this the stuff that we need to get through, we'll get through them. We'll get through them together. And from that, then there'll be a contract for employment. And because you're appointed by me, your tenureship is indefinite. The only person you can get rid of you is me. And because that's the way it is. This is not an elected place as yet. We, by law, must reclaim the kingdom as it was before, but better. And I say, as we move forward, we'll look into all of that. The other thing that we, because we're now moving forward in this direction, I do have samples and ideas of our passports and things like that. If you have any ideas, I welcome them. I'll be working very closely with our Minister of Interior, who is also a digital man, knows all this stuff, and he and I will be working on passports and of course I'm talking about Michael Proper, passports and that type of thing, and how we want to incorporate all of that so that other nations around the world recognize us for who we are, a true governing government of and for the people. Are there any questions before we move on? Any questions? Rep, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I've thoroughly enjoyed this meeting. It's been most excellent. So, good job, everybody.
Thank you. Asule, do you have any questions?
Thank
Oh,
you.
me? Okay. Yeah,
I don't have questions. I too am very impressed by this meeting. It's been very exciting. It feels like there's a lot of forward movement just in a few hours when all the right people come together. And I would say that in terms of reckoning our relationship with nature, of course, there are so many things that we would need to rectify within the way we operate legally and so forth. But it really comes down to right relationship, a personal relationship that each of us has with nature. And when that relationship is strong, we ask permission before we dig. We listen to the guidance that is given as to where and to how. We watch the water in how it moves. It's not rocket science. It's very basic and it's very intuitive. And it's what's been stripped from us as we spend our time in front of screens or disconnected from nature itself. So in order for that really to heal globally, it's an initiative of aloha. If we bring the presence of God, the presence of spirit into each initiative, into each possible incentive and opportunity, we have the ability to create balance within ourselves and on the planet. And that the earth itself and nature itself is miraculous and is much more powerful than any of us are. And that, you know, to give her the rights that she deserves, she can balance anything she wants to in a moment. Look at the power of Pele, you know, and so we're very small. And though we've been out of balance and creating all kinds of chaos and disharmony, we're not guilty. And we're not shameful, you know? And so I'm always cautioning against feeling too badly about the mistakes that we've made along the way, and that to sit in that shame or that guilt just prolongs the process. So the opportunity is to reclaim through that connection and through deepening that on a personal level. And, you know, I believe that His Majesty represents that beautifully. And if we take on that mantle and find that balance within and that connection within, and allow the fear to be dispelled so that the hope can be there, and then the vision and the possibilities follow from there. So thank you. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question, Your Majesty?
Oh, yes, Devar.
Yeah. What percentage of Hawaiian Homeland Trust does the Kingdom of Hawaii own, and what percentage does the state of Hawaii own? Do you have any data on that, Your Majesty?
Yes, definitely. The Homeland Trust was established in but that not here. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs, OHA, has been supposed to be the group was created in the 1980s to see to the lands, the trusts, and what the Hawaiians would get, and what the United States was willing to accept and not accept. This is a very long discussion that, but in a nutshell, all of that will be returned back to the kingdom, because you have two types of land. You have the crown lands, you have the Kuleana lands. The Kuleana land, as you know from your assignment, was your responsibility. Kuleana is a responsibility because you all did your assignment. And so when I speak Hawaiian, you'll understand where I'm coming from. So the Kuleana was given to the people who were not of royal blood. And those Kuleana lands are being jeopardized today. Our governor, Auntie Victoria's home, is now in jeopardy right now because the state is trying to take over that land, that's Kuleana land, that has been in her family for many, many, many years. So that the developer have gone to court to have the court change that so that they can own the land, pennies on the dollar, to build upon that land. Where Maui has been burnt in Lahaina area, they're trying to build smart homes out there, smart this and smart that on the island, and not giving the rights to the people who live there. That's where we come in to take care of that problem, Attorney General, for the people of Lahaina, Maui. And so to your question, again, one is the crown lands that belong to the royal family. That is 1,300,000 acres, roughly. And the rest of the land belong to the non-royals. That was established during the time of Kamehameha III. He's the individual that called the Great Mahele, who divided the lands. Unfortunately, having gone back to that, and again, I don't like talking ill, even of my ancestor, but he was wrong. He was wrong in the division, and how he did that was wrong. And I will be correcting that wrong as we move forward in the kingdom, because, well, that's another story. But anyway, Kamehameha III is caused that to happen. Did I answer your question?
Yes. Thank you, Your Majesty. Because I noticed that State Department is highly mismanaged. They're selling it to real estate agents, is what I felt, Your Majesty. Thank you, Your Majesty.
And they are. And Michael Proper went to Maui to Auntie Victoria, and even tried to purchase the land adjacent to hers. It wasn't about the money. He couldn't buy the land so that he can protect it. It was politics. They wanted to take the land because by taking that, they can take Auntie Victoria's land and other lands in conjunction. Had nothing to do with the money, because the money was there. We had the money. Isn't that right, Michael?
We actually had an offer of a couple $100,000 higher than what was accepted because of it goes back to the water rights. It goes back to even the basis for the fires, and it's just land control. But I think that the solution to this is not going to be fighting individual topics. It's going to be addressing the whole thing and doing it in such a way where the spirit of aloha is really welcoming to all, but it puts things in the right proper perspective, so to speak. It aligns with the spirit.
And I
of-
agree.
Mhm.
Again, if you look to the flag right there, there's a purpose why Mom did that. Because we're not just fighting for 8 islands. We're fighting for all the lands that belong to the Kingdom of Hawaii, that the state of Hawaii has no jurisdiction or control over. That's an important statement. They have no jurisdiction or nothing over those islands. The federal government is the one has been controlling that and making consensus with other nations, such as France and Germany. They have their stuff there in the islands. That I know is a fact. And so, like the Native Americans on their sacred mountain, where they found gold and black, I forgot that, I can't think right now. They refused to take any money because that sacred mountain belonged to them. Well, the Hawaiians at the time refused to take money as well because the land belonged to the people. So what the United States did, they leased the land for $1, for 100 and some odd acres for $1 a year. And what people don't realize that is a blessing. Because had we taken a lot of their monies that they said, well, we'll pay you this, we'll give you that, you're actually paying, you're actually selling the land to the United States. So any country that was there, you're selling it. The people back then did not. They did not sell it. So the United States said, well, we'll put it in a bank account. So it was $1 a year that happened to lease the land. Again, it's not about nothing more than utilizing the law, albeit good or bad, to fit their thesis, to fit their, because the ones who create the law can hide behind it. And so behind me, as you see those islands there, those islands are, in my opinion, are easy to reclaim back to the kingdom. And that's where my mind has been headed for such a long time. It's the entire archipelago, not just the 8 islands that everyone is accustomed to. But in this panel, all of you know the history of Hawaii because you've been inundated by that truth. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, Ule, I called upon you.
Wait,
You have any
Wait.
statement?
okay, I have a question. I noticed that when we came on onto the Zoom call, that it said that we were being recorded by AI. Did we choose that?
Oh, I'm now recording it. That's for me. I now
Okay.
record so I can listen back and recover that. So it doesn't go out. It's with me.
Okay, thank you, Your Majesty.
So I know exactly what everybody has said and not said, and this is good because although I'm smart, I got a good memory. I can forget things too. So Thank you.
I do want to note that these meetings, if we really want adoption and we want to be taken serious, they should be open meetings where the world can hear and understand the spirit, the intent, the drive. And if not, then we need to so choose to not be associated to that. And the work that I've done will be flushed because it's either we're honest and we're transparent. We can be obfuscated from our data and our identity. And that's what I would recommend is individuals, our names and who we are and what we do can be separated, but we can still come together in unity and serve. But there has to be a point where this can't just be hidden under a rock. So we need to make that delineation because historically we had a blessing to do that. But if people don't agree with that, then we really need to understand that. And my involvement probably should pause because everything that I am involved with has to be honest, transparent, above board, open, and we have to do it in good faith for the future because they'll never know what's happened if we're not willing to do that. It will just be a cycle, a meeting, a time. And so that's kind of my perspective. The other thought Marcia.
Let me stop you a moment there. Lenny, what are your thoughts here? Or that Michael mentioned?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand his point. We have a plan that will unfold publicly. We're not hiding what we're doing. And the more we bring our plan out to the international community and ask for their support, and all the actions we take along those lines will be public. We're not, as I say, we're not hiding anything.
Thank you. Chief Justice, your Mano?
Your Majesty, I believe the world over would recognize transparency in a model if we were to use a model where many things are discussed publicly and made public knowledge, and including meetings or certain portions of meetings. But in counseling with each other, and I think this is true of just of all humanity, there is a value in when counseling with each other and debating, and I don't even like the word debate, but discussing and considering how to move forward. There is a value, and I think all of humanity would accept and understand that there is a value of being able to discuss things in preliminary stages in an executive session. Because, you know, as the saying goes, more heads are better than one. More minds are better than one. And if we just throw out to the world each and every idea that we have at its original inception, that's going to be really confusing. And it could cause, I mean, we luckily are not beholden to the type of politicking and politics that the United States is, but just look at what happens when some politician pops off and says what's up on the top of their head. And then, you know, the news media moguls take it and turn it into, you know, that's their absolute statement of what they believe and what they think and what they are and who they are. I do think that there is, just as we do as individuals, we think things through, we contemplate them inside our own minds before we share them with others. This is an entity and an organization which exists as a body of multiple people headed and governed by Your Majesty. And I do think that there is a necessary function of being able to consider things and debate things and discuss things behind closed doors before we throw it out to the world at large. And I do think that's a necessary function. I do want to say, though, I agree with Michael Proper's statement that it's important to be transparent. I don't think his involvement needs to be paused at all. I don't know what Michael's response would be to what I'm saying. I just think we need to be smart about the things we discuss and debate privately and the things that we discuss and put out to the world publicly. But I can't see a country holding it against us, and I can't see any person or group of people holding it against us, that we have the ability and take the ability to consider things internally, privately, before we bring it out publicly.
I like all this discussion. Anybody have any other input?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, Barbara.
Your Majesty, a couple of things. First off, I always feel like this is the family sitting around the living room and discussing the intimate details of what we're about and who we are. But there's also, because there's such an uncontrolled situation with the internet, and there are a number of people out there that are not stable. Having had experience myself and in my own security, and having had an unfortunate situation years ago where someone didn't agree with me, that in a security way, that I was put at risk. And so therefore, I would say that this is a security issue for the people at this table until we find ourselves in a financially secure position and in a stable position where we have a final referendum
but we're in a very formative stage right now. And to have anybody think that they disagree with us and decide they're going to change our will by taking someone out, I mean, I'll just say it that way, or
That's
something like
violent.
that. Yes, exactly. Then that's where I stand on this matter. I would prefer for this to be closed meeting still.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take everything and, thank you. I will look at everything that we're discussing today and, go from there. Lenny, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think I've contributed what I had today.
Anybody have anything to contribute to this, discussion here?
Regarding this topic,
Yes, Earl? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Earl.
Aloha, everyone. Yeah, there's one thing that I did have to say, or just to mention, that throughout history, anything that's for peace is always opposition to that. And a lot of times when there's details that's been given out, it also gives the people that are in opposition of that opportunities of strategies to stop or negate those obstacles. So that is one very clear thing that needs to be out there, that there is going to be opposition to peace and always have been. So it is always careful of what's said and what needs to be said publicly and what needs to be always said privately. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Earl is, he's my director for my Secret Service detail. Earl is, as you folks may know, the last time I introduced him, is a retired police officer of many, many years, high ranking and very affluent, knows the law pretty well, and has worked with many high profile people throughout his career. So I value his opinion. Thank you, Earl, for your thoughts and Chief Justice, you had something to say?
Two things, Your Majesty, and this might seem a little out of order. I had posted in the chat, and I had texted message to you also, a proposal that I'd like to know what your thoughts are on it with regard to citizenship, dual citizenship, or single citizenship in the kingdom. The long and the short of it was I proposed I feel like I would need your permission. Well, I certainly would need you, because I can't pronounce the Hawaiian version of it. I did type it out in the chat. An oath of fealty to the kingdom and to your son, to the monarchy of the Kingdom of Hawaii, if for anyone, for whatever reason, they feel like they need to maintain dual citizenship, either in the United States or with another country, because I can't speak to the laws of, other countries that other people are in. But an oath of fealty, and there was actually historically, and again, I typed out the full name of it, an oath of fealty. It wasn't called an oath of fealty, but I can't pronounce the Hawaiian version of it. Anciently in Hawaii, that was made to lesser chiefs, to the king of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And so there is precedent within the kingdom to do this. So if I had your permission, and you can take it under advisement and consider it, or if you already
I've been looking at it.
Okay. I'm not trying to press for an answer right now. I just wanted to bring it to your
I'm giving
attention.
my answer. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Press
Okay.
forward, please.
Okay. And then secondarily, this is just to everybody here. I posted a link in the chat. I'd love, unless Your Majesty is not okay with this, I posted a spreadsheet that people can access just via a link that I dropped in the chat, where they could put their contact information if it becomes necessary at some point for anyone on this council to communicate with others. Would you be okay with that, Your Majesty?
Yes.
Okay. So I would ask everybody to look at the link that I dropped in the chat. You click on the link, you have access, and you have the ability to add your information to the spreadsheet for contact purposes. That's all I had, Your Majesty.
Thank you. But go ahead and move forward on the oath and so forth.
Will do.
I have
What-
some feedback on
Chief
this.
Justice was talking about is called Kuleana. The lower chiefs and high chiefs all had their responsibilities in their a'upua'a. A'upua'a was like little counties, and they had a kunihiki there, and that these individuals, was responsible for the welfare of that aopoa of food. Back then, they did the bartering system. Farmers, fishermen, and many other things came about. And as you all know, Michael Proper put together the Hawaiian dollar, which he has asked everyone if they would like to understand more. And I would encourage you folks to learn more about the dollar. And that is another way of bringing back our sovereignty, our independence. That's who we are in that. When you take away a country or a nation, you take away their language, you take away the culture, you take away their tradition, you take all that away, and then you have nothing. And that's how they do that. Yes, Michael.
I think this topic is a very key topic because the perceptions are very different, but I would like to express the importance of the individual's name, who they are, as a sacred thing, not something that is shared in public, but know that everything we do through email or shared spreadsheets or phone calls or searches, it's all public. We may not realize it, but the National Security Association right here in Utah has actually been taking all of that data. They basically meta tag it and then store it. And so what I would propose as a standard policy and structure, especially around security, is one, names are never publicly shared. Two, everything we do digitally is private or public. We assume that it's public. If we want to go into an executive session, that's private, whether it's a group or one-on-one, we literally define it and say we need to go off record, because everything that we do, we should just assume that it's public. And this is coming from 30 years of high-end security and privacy history. The future is going to be fought over identity that are digital. And I don't want to go negative or talk about negative topics, but those are going to be the way that people are profiled, and societies of the future are segregated. They can't divide our language anymore. They can't physically divide us anymore, but they can identify us, and in a prison that's everywhere, they can segregate us and take us out, so to speak. But what I would propose is, if we provide protection of our identities and provide them in a sovereign way, so transactions that happen are private. Even discussions that we have, there are laws associated with them one-on-one, but I would propose that everything we do as a group is assumed to be open and to the world. And then we standardize a process where we say we need to go in an executive session and this topic is private. But what we do is literally assume that everything is open, transparent, but our identities are private. And if we do that, I promise you, at least from my individual perspective, that is the way to be able to lead the rest of humanity through the digital nightmare that's coming. When AI meets centralized systems around health or data or finance or credit or anything, then it combines with the individual's identity, biological or physical, or just straight data in its system. That is where the oppression is going to come. And when we as individuals can become sovereign ourselves, whether it's our first name that we disclose in meetings. So I would propose when we log into this meeting, we only use our first name or our last name, and we plan on it being public. And then we literally say, no, this is a private topic. We're going to go into executive session. And we care, for instance, this whole medium, this whole system, every word that we say, you would be blown away at the AI that can go behind this system that is actually all housed in China. And I'm not saying China is bad, but this platform, and I've personally built replacement platforms for Zoom over and over and over again, like for the last 15 years of my life. So I'm trying to go forward with best practices that are digital, and then we come back and, because put it this way, this last week, the case that we thought the state of Hawaii would recognize the Kingdom of Hawaii, they threw it out and they said, we don't agree with it, but you can appeal. You should appeal because this digital approach to it is unique and different. And I think you actually have something there. Think about that. That's a judge in Hawaii, in the state of Hawaii, that is stating that. I would also, I think Marcia, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, there's something very important there, Your Highness. The things that she touched on and digging into allodial, which the kingdom knew very well with their records, which are still there in the kingdom's archives. The books are still there. They're in good order. We have everything we need to stand up, but we must stand up transparently. If we do it private, in my opinion, this work, it needs to wait until everyone is ready to get onto that page. I'm not saying as an individual, I'm out and I'm going to take my ball and go play somewhere else. That's not it. But I just know with a surety that honesty, transparency in a governing form is the way that the kingdom can be recognized externally, and they can't stop that. But we have to abide by the same structure, and open meeting laws are structures, and they operate the same way. Oh, Josh, go ahead. You're on mute, bud.
I'm just raising my hand every so often to say, when you're done,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
All I wanted to say is that Michael's totally correct. Anything and everything that is in any kind of online system, Google, Zoom, anything, it's all accessible by the NSA, probably by China. I'm aware of cases specifically where China hacked into the internals of DOJ, US DOJ. So he is correct. We need to assume that any of these platforms that we're using is public information. In fact, in my law firm, there's a statement in my representation agreement with every client that says, you and I are going to choose to communicate by phone, by text message, by email, and by other Zoom, by other electronic means. We know, you and I are acknowledging in this representation agreement that we know that other people are listening, despite the fact that there is an attorney-client privilege that is supposed to be absolute. But you and I are choosing that we're going to communicate electronically, because the only other alternative is for you to always drive to my office, which could be bugged if someone really wanted to, but drive to my office or drive to some unknown location and have a conversation out in nature. If we really, and we probably have to get naked if we really want to be truly paranoid and careful, because bugs can be placed in clothing. So Michael is correct. Anything we put into any system that's tied to anything electronically that we did not build ourselves. Now, if we built our own system, if we built our own Zoom, if we built our own, spreadsheets that can be kind of filling them out and all encrypted, then you have a degree of hopeful security. But that's the only way. And so we would need to allocate funds from the kingdom to do so, to have those IT systems that are all fully encrypted. I assume at this point I feel like at this point we're still needing to use whatever cost-effective platforms are necessary, basically hoping with our fingers crossed that no harm comes to any of us. So that's all I wanted to say, was basically that Michael is absolutely correct.
No, thank you, Chicha. I know Michael is correct in what he said. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. We're running out of time here, but I just want to say this was a very good conference with everybody here, because now we're getting down to the wire as we move forward. My goal now is to make sure everybody know what you're getting involved with. Working with me and the kingdom is, for me, it's a blessing to work with all of you. But if you choose to move forward in something else because of whatever you feel might happen, then I honor that. But my work is not for the faint of heart. I will tell you that. It is for those who are unafraid to stand firm, to follow a leader who is unafraid, but will always follow the rules of law internationally and natural law, and that laws that we are admonished to obey. And although there are all these many laws and books and statutes and so forth, there's one law that's absolute that I will always follow and try to follow and sometimes fail. And that's the 10 commandments. There's only 10 laws in a thing, and we fail as human beings to even obey that. Therefore, that's where we're at. But I want you guys to I'll be sending you information out to those, all of you that wrote assignment. Thank you very, very much. I was impressed with all of you. Actually, some of you wrote and it really touched my heart. It was really good. It's kind of like you had a Hawaiian spirit in you when you were writing. Well, it's really good. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to respond to all of you individually and send my response and my recommendation and other things that you need to read to follow up on your quest to understand the Hawaiian culture, its tradition, its customs, and how things become. And then before we go to a closing prayer, a question was asked, and I want to address that by two of you here. And often I don't bring the name up, but two of you to the hospital that we are building, the Trio Life Medical Hospital. And I said, yes, it's going to be a place where you have to pay, that payment be required. But for those that aren't able to pay, they don't need to pay. I don't want them to pay. But what they can do instead is go into the old Hawaiian way, the bartering system. Some may come to be, some might be carpenters. They might exchange work for that, because no man just wants to get something, not do nothing to get it, because he will feel less of a man. Every man wants to be able to carry his weight in this world. At least that's the men I'm accustomed to, and this is the type of man that I am, is that we work and we work hard, we enjoy our work, and we provide what needs to be provided for. But our hospitals will be one of humanitarian reasons. There are many who cannot afford oncology or any of the things that's out there. The insurance is so high, and the problems that there is, it's real. Those who can pay, they'll pay. Those who cannot, then they'll find another way. And I'm a firm believer that even if a man is only able to make a table as for payment, that'll be a blessing, because he's giving something of far value, and that's himself and the things that he knows what to do. So that is the position that I've taken, and I hope I've answered your questions regarding that. Of course, Jabbar, yes?
Your Majesty, I just wanted to update on the Cyprus, if you permit me. Can I speak?
Yes.
Yeah. The government of Cyprus has come forward. They've given us the entire block of mountain where we can have a dedicated access with full security, with where you can build the cancer hospital, the World Peace Center, and the IICJ and IICC courts, with all the accommodations if you want in a joint venture basis. I just wanted to, you wanted me to update on that. I thought I'd bring it to your notice.
Oh, thank
So
you.
we can, on the first week of April, all the contractual agreements of the JD can be executed when we are visiting them personally.
Thank you. Keep in mind, just 1 second. Keep in mind that the main Peace Center, hospital, et cetera, be in Hawaii, and the others would be satellites in other countries. But the main is Hawaii, and will always be that, because that's very, very important. And the other countries that I've been talking to are willing to finance it, Barbara. They're willing to finance the build of the things that we're talking about, the Peace Center, and they love the court system and build it. And there's the contribution has been overwhelming, and the respect for the vision that we have has been well received, especially around the Middle East. They would look like that in Asia. Vietnam was mentioned, Indonesia. So there's many countries that are very much aware of our vision. We have a few minutes, but then we have to have our closing prayer. Barbara, can you make it quick?
Very quickly, if they're giving this space, the land for the Peace Center and the hospital, are they allowing us to make that sovereign territory? And can we put an embassy on there?
Yes. Is that correct?
Okay,
That's great.
We are
that
putting
is right.
there. We also
That is right.
That's wonderful.
also build an embassy in 3 areas of Africa, which we will discuss another time. He's not here, but we have, yes, we are moving
Thank you.
forward as a nation and as a kingdom. Mr. Foreign Affairs, you've been quiet. That's unlike you. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
I did raise my hand at one point, but I didn't want to elongate things unnecessarily when we were closing. But I would like to say that in terms of peace, selecting some data or facts and asserting an opinion in such a way as to denigrate or belittle or demean others, it reduces all of our voices, and it suppresses some voices, and it moves us away from peace.
I
So-
agree.
Okay.
I support that. I don't know if you heard what my dad said about in service of the people. But yes, I agree. Sis, you have any remarks before we leave?
I just kind of wanted to, I was thinking about the I want to go back to the dual citizenship. Garth is a dual citizen. He's a Canadian and an American. And for him to be working in the US
Sorry about
government is
that.
kind of, no, but I'm saying that he's like, for example, he's looking forward to getting his retirement. He's looking forward to getting Social Security. So people
That
who
will
come
not
up to
affect
that
him.
point,
That will not affect them.
no, for any of us who is
Yeah.
on this, will it affect any of us? I'm just
No.
saying in general, no.
I've already
Okay.
checked, I've already checked. What you folks have, it's yours. Like,
Mhm.
it's yours.
Yeah, and also for the one thing that I wanted to make known is that I appreciate everybody's comments today. I really did learn a lot, and it's kind of intriguing. The more we get on these meetings, the more I have more manao. I like it. Thank you. Thank you.
Should we go weekly?
Yes,
Are you talking to me, Your Majesty?
yes, do you have something to say?
I just wanted to point out that I believe Claudia had her hand up earlier, and I'd love to hear what she wanted to add.
Yes, Claudia, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, aloha, everybody. I just wanted to say something about the climate change, the concerns of Dr. Lenny. And so as His Majesty is working to bring in the truth out, right? It is necessary to bring the truth. I'm going to tell you why, because the health of the environment, this chaos that is happening in the environment is reciprocal to the health of the people, our minds, our bodies, the food that we eat, right? And if we leave this, if we don't do anything right now, in 100 years, everybody from Hawaii, people from Hawaii is leaving, all the natives are leaving to other places. And there is nobody to work here to be a steward of the land, do the proper things that has to be done with the environment, the people, the thoughts, the food that we eat. So everything is a blessing. So bringing this truth is going to bring this healing that we are talking about. It's going to bring that balance in every single thing that we are doing. And we are standing on the truth, as His Majesty is talking about. He's bringing this truth. We have to stand up with the truth. The legal side of it is we have the legal side on our side, on the kingdom. And we just have to wait, let things come their way, pray, be loving as we're learning of this. And people is gonna come back to Hawaii. Is gonna the right things are coming. The truth is coming out. People needs to know about this. That everything is from our land, from God. This balance that we are talking about. So don't be afraid, because love, the love that the kingdom is bringing, love is taking away all the fear that we could have, is gonna go away when we are in love, when we are doing these things from their heart, our heart, most of it, and considering everything that comes from God. And I just want to say this. I love you all. Aloha, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Auntie Victoria, are you there? Or do I just have your picture? Oh, aloha.
Aloha, Your Majesty, with much,
Welcome.
much love to you and all of you that are here on this meeting. Our Heavenly Father has created this space for us to gather at this time. There is a reason. All the things that has been placed upon this table is because of His doing. And we, as the children of our Heavenly Father, are the ones to set it in place in its proper time. I'm a firm believer of, there's a time and space for everything.
Mahalo Keakua.
And we cannot be pushing things forward. For if we do that and we rush, we are sure to miss something that is very important, and it will turn into turmoil. My belief is to also listen to the people of the islands and the challenges that they go through and how they move forward with the kingdom in heart, especially our King. And with this, it gives them even more foundation to keep and continue to do the things that is right, not only for ourselves, but especially for our future. These things that we carry upon our shoulder, we need to lay it down to our Mother Earth, for she is the one, the healer of all things. She is the one that will help us to grow the food that is necessary. She is the one that brings the energy. For this, Your Majesty, I thank you so much for this opportunity to be sitting here in this position and to listen to all the mana'o that has been given this day. I pray that all these words come to pass. And I pray that all these words will build and strengthen the people's foundation so that they can move spiritually, not mindfully, spiritually, because that is what we are in need of at this time. I thank you, Shule, for being here in this space. And I will continue to gather with our elders for the prayers that has been given through all these trips that I have made with you has prospered, and it has strengthened the words of the people. I want you to know that. Give my love to the elders of these spaces. I will meet and gather with them again, for the positive energy that has been placed upon this space that we have gathered this day is so important for growth. So much knowledge and wisdom. Mahalo nui, Uncle Lanny, for your steadfastness in bringing all your knowledge and mana'o and clarity for us to understand. Your Majesty Joshua, we thank you, Your Honor, for bringing your mana'o and your precious time to this space and to helping us to understand beyond what we as Kanaka Maoli only know for. Thank you, all of you, for bringing this energy here. And I know with our leader, our Majesty, our King, our beloved, who has only shown love to us all. And I share this with our people. Even if there is stumbling in our communities, that they know there is a mighty King that loves us all and a nation that stands together, that is so willing and giving of your time to help us to move forward. I thank you with all my heart. I thank you, King, for allowing me this space.
Mahalo nui loa. My ka'i aloha.
Mahalo.
Can you give closing prayer, please?
Yes, I will. It's an honor to do that for you, Your Majesty. E pulikako, e kia kua mana loa. Mahalo nui for this time. Mahalo for allowing us to wake up in this blessed day and to share these things. Mahalo nui for all those that have been here. Even if those that have never spoken, we can feel your heart. For your heart is filled with love for our people and our nation and our country that is so in need of you as an individual. We thank you, Father in heaven, for the knowledge and the wisdom that has been placed upon us this day. Oh, the spiritual growth that thou has allowed us to partake of. May we grow with strength, knowledge, and wisdom together and share all the things that is needed to move our precious and loving nation forward. Bless our families, our pillars that have been standing beside us with love and understanding in support of all that we do. Mahalo kia kua for this airway, whether it is good or bad. Only you can hold the goodness and peace that we all hold in our hearts. We pray and ask for forgiveness if there has been anything that we have said with one another. It is not our intention. Clarity and transformity is the way to move. I thank you, Father in heaven. We praise your name and we ask for thy blessings to be upon us throughout this week to help us to gain more of thy wisdom. And we say this graciously in the name of our Heavenly Father. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone. We have exactly 1 minute left. We did pretty good. Yes. And give a closing chant for me, please. I love to have our chant before we leave.
I will call upon Eo
Aye.
so that he may bring and knowledge and wisdom, and that these knowledge and wisdom are within our hearts to bring growth in everything that we do.
As Auntie Victoria does her chant, I want to say aloha to everybody because we'll probably be cut off.
Yes.
But I just want to send you folks my love and aloha. And
Love you, Majesty. Love you, Your Majesty.
Aloha.
Ku e manue. Ke alua kunei ka pule ia hakalau. Ulia kalani ia uli. Ia namu. Ia nawe. Ka nehi luna. Ka nehi lalo. Ka kau ka ahema kumakani hai kalani. He kili ka italani. Kauila nui ma ke italani. Pane italani e ola ke kanaka. O mai ka loea ka ike ka mana. Ia e ka honua la. O wahalau ali. O kahi waihuai ka ua o lelo. Eli tau mai. Mama wanu. Love you all with the spirit of aloha. Ahui ho.
Love you, Auntie.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Ahui ho.